Well, while I'm here, I hope to bring you a few thoughts that will be helpful to you, because we're getting along the way, and I want you to have some of these basic truths settled in your hearts and minds and be able to apply what I call Christian philosophy to your daily walk. And if you can do that, you'll get through. But if you are ignorant of the ways of life and the laws and the principles which God has given us, our life becomes sometimes quite tragic. But it need not be. Even though tragedy may come as a means of discipline to it, He gives us power and grace to interpret it so that it doesn't leave a scar and a mar on our spirit. But we receive it in our discipline out of it. What God wants, and then the side, and some addiction He gives us. Our mind overnight can never be the same. Oh, no, forget it, dear. No, that's a very strange and wrong reaction. Now, I want to help you so that when trouble comes or when you have difficulties, you will not cast away your faith, but be able to have it stabilized in God and take of the grace of God, which He has so freely given and does freely give us to tide us along. Now, today, according to the Christian calendar, and this is Palm Sunday, isn't it? Supposed to be? Well, I'm not too much of a churchman. I don't keep track of all of the days, the daily feasts and the absence of the feasts. And of course, they're all right, but I don't go in that. But I know it's the day when they sing the palms. How do you remember that lovely old anthem, the palms? I suppose it's been sung all over the nation today, hundreds and hundreds of places. But you know, when we have Palm Sunday, it brings to my mind the story of Jesus in his what we call the triumphant entry into Jerusalem. And since that is the theme for the Palm Sunday, it's recorded in all four Gospels. I had the pleasure of seeing the original painting that is used so much today in Sunday school books and papers and pamphlets, the triumphant entry of Jesus. How many of you are familiar with that very old one that's been painted for years and years? But it's a classic. It's worthwhile. But it always seemed to me so pathetic. Everybody seemed to be getting such wonderful joy and pleasure out of the thing. To me, when I looked at it, I thought, yes, that is a triumphant entry into Jerusalem. So when I looked at the story of its recorded in all four Gospels, I was amazed to find this. It was not a national reception. It was a provincial thing. He had come to the nation, to the world, particularly to a nation. And it should have been a whole nation in its recognition. So it was not a national, what we would call a national triumphant entry into Jerusalem. It was provincial. It was the result of his little trip up in Galilee, where he had worked miracles, and the people followed him. And as they followed him, they came down to Jerusalem, and under the impact of that thought of his graciousness and his love and his mercy toward these people, they thought, this is a wonderful time, and he accepted it. And so he thought, this is a time for me to do one more thing. I've come to fulfill the prophecies. And if you'll notice, so many times when he's ministering, he'll say, this he did to fulfill a prophecy. This he did that the prophecy might be fulfilled. You'll find that over and over in these Gospels. And here's an occasion, because it had been prophesied in the Old Testament that their Redeemer, their Messiah, would come and enter into their city riding upon a little ass in that simple, humble fashion. Now that part is all right, but what disturbed me was to think that the very people to whom he had come and for whom he is going to die are the ones who paid least respect. None of the people came from the temple. Nobody came from the temple to enter into such a thing. It annoyed them, and they were disturbed and sent out people to ask what in the world it was all about. There was nothing national, nothing broad and generous as it should have been in the heart of his people. It was a little local affair manifest by these loving hearts. He loved the common people. He loved the common people. You don't find him going to the temple with his message, preaching to the priests and all. He knew better than that. He didn't go to them for any of their help, any of their publicity, any scheme, anyone who would put on a drive for him. He was very independent in his humility and in his limitation. Therefore, he worked lovingly, gently with the common people. And it were just these common people who gave him this wonderful, triumphant moving into the city with their palm branches meaning victory and shouting, Hosanna, Hosanna, here comes the King. It was beautiful and all, but to my heart it seemed there was a sadness in my heart to think it was limited to just that one little local group when all Israel should have rejoiced and all of his own people should have been the ones backing him up in such a magnificent thing, but they were not forthcoming. Now that started me thinking, and I think every once in a while, I said, Lord, there must have been a reason for this. How does it come that here he is, now toward the end of his life, he has manifested himself in all these marvelous, dramatic ways of miracles, signs, wonders, healings, and teaching past anything that we have on this earth for man. Teaching, and then gets so little. So, as I was thinking about it, I thought, well, it must be a reason. And the Lord began to show me the danger of tradition rather than truth. Now, a tradition can have some truth, but if it isn't the real truth in God, but is flavored by truth, a tradition can become so threadbare and has lost its power and significance that it is a danger rather than a help at all. It doesn't act as a crutch even. You act as a crutch, it will slip, and you're down you go with purely traditional things. So I said, well, Lord, tell me how that goes. Why is that? Then he brought to my mind a little illustration from the Word when he was dealing one time, speaking. These people couldn't see the Lord. Here were the Jews, they couldn't see him. These other people, they couldn't see him. A little handful of people who had simplicity of faith and heart open, they could receive him. So I said, Lord, will you help me with that? Tell me how that goes. Well, he says, it's a lack of revelation. If they walk in a revelation, all right, but if you walk in a tradition, you have lost what the revelation should have given you. Not that you go to hell. I'm not talking about hell and heaven. I'm talking about these disastrous pockets into which you slip in your living and thinking, when it's purely a traditional thing that is brought you there and not something that is vital. You've lost it. So I said, well, how is that? Well, he said, listen. Any testimony that is given is always a revelation. A testimony is a revelation of what that soul holds. His testimony is his reaction to that revelation. The truth comes. It's displayed. It's preached. And people hear it. Now, everyone has to give a personal reaction to that truth because that's the way we're made. Psychologically, we are reacting agents. And there can't be one thing approaching us or touching us, but what automatically we will make a reaction. Physically, mentally, spiritually, because that's what we are, a trinity. And the law holds just as much in the fact that I am a thinking creature or a spiritually minded creature as a physical creature. I react. I don't know. No, automatically. Somebody comes up and dashes you to your face. You don't think, I had better move. No, you're dead already. you don't think. It's a reflex in us. Why? Because that's the way we're made. Now you carry that same truth over, and it's the same not only in the physical, it's just the same in our moral field and in our spiritual field. We react continually to an external stimuli, which is like a revelation. And when the revelation comes, what you get out of it is what you have brought to it. And in this reaction, there you are. He taught and preached exactly the message, but as he was preaching that message to maybe 2,000 or 3,000, a number of them would get a certain reaction to that because they were geared to it and had ears to hear, and so he would say, let him that hath ears hear. What does he imply? There are people without ears, not these, with no inner ear. He that hath an ear, let him hear. Well, I hear. No, you haven't any ear at all. Well, I have two. I'm not talking about your two ears. I'm talking about that inner ear that is able to catch the word, the truth. And Jesus taught that way. He says, let him that hath an ear hear. The implication is that there are thousands without it. So he said to me, in life, among our people, a person's reaction to truth is his testimony. And you have a testimony. I have a testimony. What is going to govern it? How you react to truth will be your testimony. That's what you got out of the truth. How I react to it, that will be my testimony. But it's my personal testimony concerning the identical truth that was presented. And here, 25, 30, 40 people listening, you will all get a reaction. And you all have a testimony. Now, much of that, we can't go into detail, much of that is determined by what you bring to it. But that's another message in itself. So we have to be careful in what mood we are in this mood of reception. Because what we bring to it governs very much what we get out of it. But if you really want to know how much of a revelation a man has, listen to his testimony. That's all, just his testimony. His testimony in action, his testimony in his word, his testimony as he lives. His living testimony, for we are all epistles read and known of all men. What are they? They are the testimony. Therefore, his testimony is going to be what he got in the revelation. Well, I said, I see that, Lord. That's right. A man's testimony is a dead giveaway. It's just a dead giveaway. Your testimony is a giveaway as to how much you've received in the revelation. Somebody else by you have received too. But it's going to be governed by your own personal experience. So he brought to my mind the story of one who walked and dealt with the Lord, had as much privilege as any of the disciples, and yet he asked such a very strange question. And that's what started me off. He was dealing with his disciples one time, and do you remember Philip? Yes. Do you remember what his attitude was? He turned to the Lord after all this ministry, and he says, Lord, show us the Father, and it'll suffice us. Then we'll get through. Well, Jesus was almost astounded. He said, Philip, have I been with you all this time, and now you ask me to know who the Father is? He that has seen me has seen the Father. What kind of a reception has this revelation been, that I have been with you these years, teaching, talking, demonstrating the powers of God, moving, and now, as a result of that, you're asking me to show you the Father? I said, Lord, isn't that a terrible thing? So that I ask the Lord all about these things, then he tells me about them. And this is second hand now to you. This is what he told me. He said, well, if you want to know about that man, why he's so strange, try to find his testimony someplace. See what he believes in his expression. Now get a hold of this man, and Philip, get his testimony, then you find how far his revelation goes. I said, "Oh, Lord, help me get this testimony. Where will I find it?" So I start in to find the first mentioning of this man, Philip, in his reactions to truth. And let me read you this little bit. It's found in John 14. If you're taking notes, John 14, 8, 9, 10, 11. I'll read it. Philip saith unto him, "Lord, show us the Father, and it sufficeth." Jesus said unto him, "Have I been so long time with you, and yet hast thou not known me, Philip?" See, he doesn't say know the Father, he says know me. Why? Because if you know me, you'll know the Father. He says, "And you haven't known the Father?" No. He says, "It's been all this time you don't know me, because if you know me, you'll know the Father." Therefore, there's something slipping in here. Yet thou knowest me, Philip, he that hath seen me hath seen the Father, and how sayest thou then, show us the Father? Believest thou not that I am in the Father, and the Father in me? The words that I speak unto you, I speak not of myself, but the Father that dwelleth in me, he doeth the works. Now, I want to stop here just a minute. I want you to see the utter dependence of Jesus in this strange manifestation of God to us. He does not act independently in any way. There's no independence. He is the most dependent creature. In the one phase of his manifestation, he is the last Adam, acting in his utter dependence upon God, for Adam was made that way. And so he restricts his fashion of living to the fact that he is this last Adam. Therefore, he is to be absolutely dependent. In creation, God made man limited and dependent. Two chief characteristics of the human. Adam, the first man, made in all of his perfection, and God was pleased, and God says it is good. Two characteristic marks of that natural Adamic man were these. He was dependent upon God, for there was no life in himself. He is a created creature. And he is limited to move within the sphere of the human nature bounds. Whatever your nature calls for, you move with the embrace of that. Angels move within the angel nature. Angels aren't men, and people never become angels. We used to sing that, "Let me be an angel," and with the angels stand, well, don't worry, you'll never be an angel. We aren't supposed to be angels. We'll be glorified humanity. Let the angels alone. They are specific creatures that belong in God's economy as servants. Divine nature, angelic nature, human nature, animal nature, there are four. Now he says, in this human nature, I will make it dependent and limited. He's dependent that he cannot of himself do anything. But as I give him life and strength and my will is revealed, he will take his willpower, which is his, attach it to mine, and we will work together. But he does not originate it. I originate all the planning. You do the execution of it. And you are limited. Now, since that is true, when Jesus is here, he lived in a marvelous, unique pattern, the perfect Adam. And so he says, I am dependent. What you see me do, it is the Father who doeth these things through me. I have nothing to say of myself. What I hear the Father say, that I say. They were very true. He was a completely consecrated instrument in the hands of God for the display of God's grace and power. So it says, he that has seen me has seen the Father, for I don't originate anything. The words that I give the message is God's. The power that I have is God's. I am his son. I am the last Adam. I'm functioning. But there's no independence in me. Neither in any of the Trinity. Neither is it in the Spirit. For he says, and when he, the Spirit, is come, he will take the things that I have given and show them unto you. He will not speak from himself. Now, he will not speak of himself. That's a poor preposition. He speaks of himself in his ministry hundreds of times, but he never speaks from himself as an authority. Never. He will take the things that I have given and speak them to you. Why? To keep that strange, dramatic unity in the whole scheme. The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. A Trinity in his teaching, a Trinity in his message, a Trinity in his method of work. So he says, if you have seen me, you've seen the Father, for we are one. What I do, that's the Father working through me. What I preach is what the Lord God Jehovah gives me. I am an instrument in his hand. I like his yieldedness and his absolute surrender. It astounds me. The more I see him, the more I marvel at his Christly hand. Most tremendous character that ever walked the earth. Most sublime personality that ever touched the earth. What made him so? Because he's fulfilling this task. And so he says, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. Now, then as I was reading that, the Lord spoke to me. And he said, get a hold of this man, and I'll show you some things. He says, look and find the testimony of Philip, and see how full his revelation is. For in his testimony, you can trace how full it was. So this is following the baptism. John 1, 43, 45. The day following, Jesus would go forth into Galilee, and findeth Philip, and said unto him, follow me. This is the call of this man, is Philip. He is called directly of the Lord. It takes faith on the part of the Lord to look at a piece of humanity and look at it. I asked how he looked. Well, he told me he always looked three ways. He looks at a person. That's all the natural phenomena. He looks through the person. That's all his reflex actions and powers. He looks past him at the outcome. He has a threefold look when he looks at a man. Now, when he looked at Philip, don't you think he knew a few things? Don't be stupid. He knew more about Philip than Philip found out in 20 years. But Jesus didn't say, now, Philip, you have a very strange complex in you, but I think I can handle it with David. Oh, no. He says, Philip, I want you. He looked at Peter. And don't you think he knew what a mess Peter was? Well, certainly, he didn't say, I'd like you. But really, on the side of my office, come, I want a little interview with you. There are a few hangovers I want to psychologically analyze with you, and I believe that I can get this straightened out. He didn't. He says, come on, leave those fish nets alone. I'll make you a fisher of men. Now, when he looked at him, he looked at Peter. He was not so charmed because he smelled fish on him. No. When he looks at a person, he looks at them. He looks through them, and he sees them over there. That's a good way to look at them. You see, he sees the potential in a person. Not the thing fully developed, but he sees the potential, and that's what he's after. And so when he looked at Philip, he says, follow me. Well, does he know all about it? He knows that date. He knows enough to know that this is the man of want. So he says, Philip, follow me. So Philip has a divine call right from Jesus himself. All right. Now, Philip was of Bethsaida, the city of Andrew and Peter. Now, we don't know how much time there's lapsed between this. I don't think it was the first minute that Jesus had called him. But he's been with Jesus seemingly enough to make his own ideas or conclusions about it. For if you continue the verse, and it says, now Philip was of Bethsaida, the city of Andrew and Peter. Philip findeth Nathanael. That's good. How do you say little personal work coming in? That's handy. He finds his first convert. He finds Nathanael and saith unto him, now get his testimony. We have found him of whom Moses in the law and the prophets did write. That's part, right? He has the right revelation as far as the word goes. Of course, you can pin it right down. We have found him of whom Moses and the law and the prophets wrote. Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph. Oh, what a letdown. Oh, what a letdown. Wasn't that terrific? He's not the son of Joseph. No relation to Joseph. Joseph is his foster father. How could he get way off the handle like that? He's the Son of God. Well, wouldn't that testimony have been wonderful if he could completed it? The one about whom Moses writes and the prophets. This man, the son of Joseph. Oh, dear. I looked at it and I said, Lord, that is a strange thing. Well, he says, are they finding what I told you to look at? And I said, yes, Lord, I'm seeing plenty in here. Philip findeth Nathanael, and saith unto him, we have found him of whom Moses in the law. That's one thing. The law. Now the prophets, that's the second thing. He's got them right on both those points. The third thing is a dead failure, for he is not that son, he is the Son of God. Now, let me help you. It's a good testimony as far as he can carry it. But how many see the limitation because of a lack of vision and discernment to know him? So he's all right when he says, he is the Son, he is the one of whom Moses spoke. Then, Lord, maybe we go to the Old Testament and get all what Moses said about him. Oh, I had a big time with this problem. But it's good to have problems the Lord works with you, isn't it? How many of you know what I mean when you get a bit of truth like that and you have to work on it for days and days, back and forth and in and out, and by and by you get your light on it. But it's all in the Word. Now, he's very right when he says, of whom the prophets spoke. So, he knows the prophets, knows them very well. And as he watches Jesus, talks with him, discerns him, why he says, he's fulfilling perfectly the pattern. According to Moses, that's the law. According to the prophets, that's the prophecies concerning him. Why, he's the son of Joseph. Oh, no. Testimony only 2/3 right. Well, does that hang him up for good now that you can't do anything with that man? And so I sat down and said, Lord, how could you have been so patient with me? And at that period, I spoke loud, and I thought I knew something about it. And Lord, how did they listen to me? Well, he said, you meant well, and my spirit was with you, and someone was blessed with it. But I said, Lord, am I still as dumb as that? He said, no. You know, you don't have to remain dumb as that if you follow it. He gives you light all the time. Hardly a day but what he's saying something fresh to me. Some little thing that I didn't twig. I said, well, Lord, I've read that 100 times. Now I see something. It's always been there, but you weren't ready for it. Now you're ready to see it. And I didn't know that 10 years ago. No. How many of you know that's a very good sign? I take it as a sign. So I said, thank you. Now let me help you with this. Does the fact that our testimony is limited, not because of any sin in our hearts and ugliness, but because we have no light or revelation, does that mean God can't do anything with us or for us? Not at all. Not at all. He can use you just as soon as you're converted and saved. How many know he is? Why? Because you have a little limited testimony revolving about your own ego, and here you are centered in it. And it's glorious, beautiful. And God says, now go out and tell the rest of them. And you go out and say, did you know Jesus? He says, I think so. Oh! And there we go, just enthused, because of our personal reaction to the revelation. And we want to communicate it to someone else. And God says, now you tell the next one. All the time looking at us. So I said, well, Lord, that's lovely how you do. That even though our revelation is so limited and broken to pieces, you use it. And you use it just the same. And he showed me how. Now you see, he's going along with the rest of his disciples. But those of us who see through this thing, how many of you can see he's going with only a 2/3 testimony and 1/3 off color? Well, look at the time that he's taken us on when 1/3 of our testimony was so in the shadow. Do you see what I mean? So limited. So limited. And yet, Lord says, now walk along with me. Be patient. You have to be patient with the Lord. He's patient with us. And so I said, yes, I see that. And then he gave me an illustration of it. I hadn't seen this before, so he gave me an illustration to show me how it goes. John 12. This is quite a while later. He's been walking with the Lord and observing all these wonderful things and hearing him teach and preach. And there were certain Greeks among them that came up to worship at the feast. The same, therefore, came to Philip. Oh, I thought, Lord, of all people to come to Philip. How many know what Greece means? Greece means culture and education and classical studies. And here are these Greek philosophers, evidently, who are curious about the faith. And so they said, well, let's go up to Jerusalem to the feast. And we'll probably learn a lot of things. That the prophet that they have is up there. And let's go up and see what he has in his philosophic patterns. And so these philosophers, these people from Greece, come and would like to have light on the subject. Well, guess who they tackle?